That's a problem. A problem is, why am I your neighbor for 10 years and I lose my housing and you don't want to speak to me? I'm something ragged. That's a problem. A problem is I can't exercise my human rights, my constitutional rights, my civil rights because I live in a vinyl house. I can't take a shower. There's no public showers. I can't use the restroom. There's no public restroom. I can't go to school because I'm stinky and smelly. I can't look for work because I got all my possessions with me. How many people got a closet full of stuff they don't use or wear anymore? But if you see a houseless person with shopping carts, you say that's a problem. It is a problem. In this richest country in the world, we got people pushing shopping carts with their possessions.
This is another great point. My camera wasn't on because it was dead. But at the very end, after the call to action, they played a video. And one of the men in there said he was talking to someone and they said, "Why don't you just get a job?" And he replied, "Are you going to give me a shower? Are you going to let me use your shower? Are you going to let me sleep in your home? Are you going to drive me there? Are you going to watch my possessions? No? Then don't tell me to get a job because it isn't that easy." It's not like getting a job is the end-all be-all of the solution. Where is he supposed to sleep at night? You know, like, I can't imagine. I knew kids at school when I was in high school, throughout my school life, who I used to give, you know, the couple dollars that I had to them because I didn't know if they were going to be able to eat at all that day if I didn't give them that money. There were kids that I knew who didn't see their parents a lot and became the parents. They would have to pick their sisters, their little sisters and their little brothers up from school every day, help them with their homework, do the dishes, do the laundry, clean the house. They were 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, taking on the responsibilities of a full-grown adult. Because these parents have to work 2 and 3 jobs to make the same amount of money that they were making 15 years ago at a better job that they probably went to school for. Now they're working at McDonald's and Burger King and Wendy's at the same time to make up, to provide for their families. And when they don't, they end up on the streets and they have nothing. They have nothing. There are no public showers. There are no public restrooms. There are homeless shelters. There are not enough homeless shelters. There are not enough beds for people. And then we look at them, us, who have it so well off. It's like I was going to a Stand With Aleppo rally. I parked in a church parking lot. I got out of my car, and a homeless woman came up to me. And it seemed like she was afraid of me, which is totally understandable. She was smaller than me, and she was black, and I know that I look white, and I know that I kind of look like a frat boy most of the time. So I can understand why people are afraid of me. But she asked me if she could have some money for the bus, and it was like $2.60, and all I had was 2 singles or a $20 bill. And I literally said to her, because I gave her the $2, and she said, "Do you have one more dollar?" And I said, "All I have is a 20." And in my mind, I immediately gave her the 20. Because I have money in the bank. All I have is a 20, and I can't break it. Sorry, so I'm not going to give you any more. Like, was I going to do that? No. Because that's inhumane, and I hate that my government puts me in that fucking position every goddamn time I go into the city. This is why I go to these events. This is why I bring my camera. This is why I do this show now. Because I'm tired of being forced to have to make that decision for myself. Am I going to feed myself, or am I going to feed someone else for a day? I'm tired of that fucking decision, and I'm tired of feeling guilty every time I choose myself, because that's not fair to me, and it's not fair to that person on the street who has to beg people to survive. Let's keep listening.
They did a survey in Portland, Oregon about hoarding. You got sentimental hoarding, you got greedy hoarding, you got hoarding because you want hoarding. So I asked the question, if you see a rich man with 5 cars, what is that called? I was told it's called a collection. That's hoarding. He can only drive 1 car at a time. So we need to do something about this and come up with solutions, not ridicule people and say they're wrong, they're bad. You don't never know what situation will cause them to live in the streets. We need to ask ourselves, am I thinking the problem or the way this country is going the problem? Traditional shelters don't work. We recycle paper, glass, and plastic. Why can't we recycle the mind? There's knowledge out there. People never would thought of tiny houses. That came from the houseless community. People had never thought of tent cities or villages where we can build community, people can network, and it can be peer-based, ran, operated where people can get on their feet. And Right to Dream 2, we've been existing for 5 years, and because we created that community, over 400 people got housed, over 339 people found work. 18 people are doing college courses online. 2 graduated from Portland State University and from Portland Community College, and we got 2 more going to college. We help 18 women keep their babies because we don't send them to the hospital. The hospital would snatch a birth hospice woman's baby and put them in foster care. We send them to midwives. 48 people quit drugs because they had the support of the community. It can work. It can work. What's that saying? It works when you work it. When you work it, that's good. It's my time is up. Thank you.
So, Ibrahim Mubarak is from the Right to Dream 2 Foundation. I should have done more research on that. But what he's talking about is real, tangible evidence that when you invest in a community, when you create an atmosphere of togetherness, of love, of compassion, things can change. People get off drugs, they get off the streets, they can keep their babies, they can get an education. They can commit when they know that people are behind them, when they know they aren't the only people that have to believe in themselves, when they have a community of support behind them. When we come together and we say, I know I can do it, I know you can do it, and I know together we can do it even better. That's when society gets better. That's when we get minimum wages. That's when we get, I get emotional when I talk about this stuff. And I know that a lot of people think I say fuck too much and I yell and I curse out to God. But it's personal because I care about these people. There is not a day that I can't think about this. Because every day in a city, I don't come from the city. And living in the city is a constant reminder of the problems in my society. And the society that I have helped perpetuate all the problems in up until a few years ago. I think that is another reason why some of us are so passionate, especially some of us millennials, because we were taught that we were better than this. We were brainwashed that we would never do anything so bad, so horrific. We were taught in school that Hitler was the worst person ever because the Holocaust, because internment camps. And then you know what I found out later? Is that the United States put my people in internment camps. My people. When it becomes personal, it becomes a bigger issue. And I think that's the key to bringing in people to this movement, is making it personal for everybody. He asked, how many people know a homeless person? I don't personally have a relationship with any homeless people, but it seems like every time I've gone out in the last week, I've run into a homeless person. Yesterday, when I was on my way home from the bank, I had 5 big bills. And there's a homeless guy right on the turn to the highway. And again, in my mind, it was, oh, all I have are $100 bills. Sorry, I can't give you anything. Do you know how that makes me feel? I know that there are other people too who feel that way and maybe would have made a different decision than I did, which probably would have been smarter. But I'll eat a little bit less if it means that he can eat more at all. I will layer myself with the clothes I already have if it means he can buy a warmer jacket, if he can buy more blankets to survive this winter that we're about to go through, that we've already experienced 3 blizzards this year, I think. Again, it's not fair that my government keeps putting me in this position, that it's a constant Band-Aid on a problem, on a giant gaping wound in our society that runs so deep into our individualism and our hatreds for poor people. Scapegoating every time. The next speaker is Albus Brooks, City Council President. Now, I know I've gotten into rants already, but I'm going to rant a lot as he's speaking. I'll let it speak for itself. Let's listen.
Had a similar conversation. Hey, I want to talk about the problem. We've lost over 70% of federal spending, and some of the folks have been talking about this over the last 20 years in housing and mental health. That is the number one problem for cities all over America. The problem. In the city of Denver today, 50,000 people pay more than a third of their income for their housing. That's the problem. What is Denver? What is the city of Denver? What have they done and what are they doing right now? Right now, the city of Denver is spending up to $40 million in homeless services and housing. Can we be spending that money better? Yes. But that's how much we're spending. 500 homeless individuals the last 2 years, actually 1,000 the last 2 years, have been housed in this city. 500 in here, and I want to just shout out the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless for doing their work, their good work in this city, and us partnering with them and also the state. The city of Denver, you heard about this jobs program that we're working on. It's much too small right now. We need to build capacity. And we need to partner with individuals. We said that mental health is one of the most important things that folks who are homeless deal with. And so we created a program of mental health services and Department of Behavioral Health Strategies in our city for the first time in the city's history. Councilwoman Kanich, you may be here tonight. The mayor and I came up with the first affordable housing program in the city's history, the largest in the state, of $150 million. All of those things are good, but it's not enough. It's not enough. Because we have had billions of dollars stop. The spigot has stopped from the federal government to all of our cities. All of my colleagues around the nation are dealing with the exact same thing and saying, how do we begin to come and solve this problem of homelessness? There are cities in America today who are claiming a state of emergency because of the housing crisis and the issues of homeless folks in the street. And so, what do we do about it? And this has come up about 3 or 4 times. And you know, I know that I am the elephant in the room because I'm a part of the camping ordinance. And as I sit here, and one of the reasons we were a part of that is I'm going to tell you right now that I believe that it's inhumane for any of us to look at someone sitting outside and say that that's okay.
So let's talk about this again. I mentioned this in the beginning. His process was to walk down 16th Street Mall, count 180 people, say, that's not okay. Then he went back to city council and said, yeah, let's just move them. Let's make it illegal for them to camp there. Let's make it illegal for them to camp anywhere in the city. And if you're caught camping, we will confiscate everything you have. Oh, we'll put it in storage facilities. There's a person in the audience who spoke later on, and I'll be doing the audience member questions in a separate video, by the way, because it's so long and it's so important that I go through it as detailed as I went through this. They mentioned that, losing my train of thought.
Is it the right solution? We can debate about that. But today, sitting up here, what I regret more than anything is the division that it's caused in this city.
Okay. Another thing. He doesn't regret putting people out on the street. I just remember what I was going to say. Someone in the audience later mentioned that no one has retrieved their belongings from any storage facility anywhere. So I don't know what they're doing. Someone else asked who's regulating that to know that to ensure that people aren't just taking people's stuff, that it's actually being stored for them later. But I want to make the point that he doesn't regret. This is where I get emotional again, because these are fucking people. Human beings. He doesn't regret confiscating blankets from homeless people in the middle of a winter. He doesn't regret keeping people homeless. He doesn't regret not coming up with a solution. He doesn't regret people probably dying because of hypothermia. But he regrets the division that it's caused. Yes, it's divisive when you say you can't be homeless. If you're homeless, you're going to be jailed and fined. And he's surprised that it was divisive? This is a Democrat, by the way. A Democrat in one of the most progressive states in the country. Let's keep listening.
Because we in Denver, we're much better than this. We're much more innovative than this. We are folks who come together. We legalized marijuana for the first time in the world's history. We have incredible things happen. We have one of the most incredible airports in the world. We have smart city advances. And you are telling me we cannot come together and figure out solutions. The first time since I've been on council in 6 years have I ever seen this many people, this diverse of an audience, come out.
You know why people don't come out? And this will be shown when I go through the audience questions in the other video. Is because whenever they do, you don't fucking listen to us. And if you pretend to listen, nothing ever gets done. And this comes back to Hillary Clinton, and I know that's a long shot right now. But it wasn't the voters' fault for not voting for Hillary Clinton. It was Hillary Clinton's fault for not motivating voters to get out there and vote for something. She didn't have a message to say, this is what we want and this is what we're going to do. You have to give people hope that if they do put in this effort, that something is going to be done. The greatest thing about the audience questions is how many people called out Albus Brooks. How many people called out all of the government, all of the people in power. Let's keep listening.
To talk about homelessness, to talk about the folks who are struggling most in this city. And that gives me more hope than anything. So here's what we do. This is what I believe. This is an event, and I think we're going to learn a lot. I'm learning already a lot from the panelists here. But we need to carry this on. We need to break out of our silos, activists, neighbors, business folks, government people, and come together and work in a committee of a group to work towards solutions, real solutions that we say, as a community, this is what we need to be doing. And so that's my call to action. I know everybody's going to have a specific call to action. I'll be happy to serve on that group. I'll be happy to bring that group together, but we need to talk together. I'm still talking. Because we've been talking in silos for far too long. Thank you, Dr. Jefferson.
The next woman who's going to be speaking is Lisa Calderon, who is from the Community Reentry Project. And I believe I completely agree with everything she says. I believe she also offhandedly calls out Brooks.
There's a great line in the film, The House I Live In, that's about America's failed drug policy. That said, our politicians feed us first the wrong problem, and then they feed us the wrong solution. And if the problem is continually defined as individuals on the streets, or wages not increasing, or not enough housing because of gentrification, we get lost in the individual dialogues and don't pay enough attention to the larger picture, which is an issue of equity. If we look through the lens of equity, then the urban camping ban would have never been passed in the first place.
If Albus Brooks had actually cared about the homeless people, had actually cared about the statistics of what solutions work and what ones don't, the camping ban would have never been passed in the first place. If he actually cared about fixing a problem and not just sweeping it under the rug, pun fully fucking intended, it never would have happened in the first place. If our government saw people the same way they saw themselves, America wouldn't be the country that it is.
I remember having a conversation with my fellow activists then at the time who came from the community, Brother Elvis, and said, you cannot do this because laws have consequences. Even if you do them with the best of intentions, there are always unintended consequences. And this city is not prepared to deal with those unintended consequences.
So what she was saying right there, and that's the offhanded remark a little bit, is that, hey, Albus, had you actually considered talking to homeless people about what we can do to solve the problem, you would have never passed the camping ban in the first place. You would have never co-sponsored it. Co-sponsor or sole sponsor. I don't know. I know he's a sponsor. I remember at the very end, when they were saying, recall Brooks, I screamed out, who's your donors? Who funds you? Who's telling you what to say? Who's your puppet master? Who are you beholden to? Because I would like to think that if you weren't able to be corrupted by money, your humanity would have come through and said, hey, maybe we shouldn't criminalize being the most vulnerable people in our society. Let's keep listening.
So part of that is what we see today. The foundation for well-being by many research reports is largely defined by where you live. It defines your health outcomes, your access to good food and water and shelter. And so when you don't have that, when you are denied that, then your outcomes for your future and your present are greatly diminished. We need to always put these kinds of policies into a historical context. So it really isn't particularly about the urban camping ban. This is just the latest iteration of government policy that disappears people.
I think this is such a great point, and I hope people don't think she means the government has been kidnapping people. No. I think the way I interpreted what she was saying was this is the latest iteration of the government creating policy that makes it so that people with problems don't exist in their eyes anymore. Rug, sweep it under.
And whether it is from discriminatory housing policy where we had redlining, where there were certain people that we didn't want to live next to, folks of color in white neighborhoods, the new line of division is around class. Actually, it always been around class. It just manifested through race. And so when we look at our city budgets, we see which groups are most privileged and which, of course, are most, disenfranchised. You know, Noam Chomsky talked about how class is really about those who make the rules and those who are required to follow them. And until we redefine that scheme, we recenter the margins so that the people who are most impacted are actually in those positions to make policy, things will continue to be as they are, with our public safety budgets growing every year, 50% of our city's budget, public safety, but not our housing budget, not our mental health budget, etc.
And this is this is an issue when it comes to sexism, to racism, to, the gay community, the LGBT community in general, is that for so long, it has only been white, cis, heterosexual men in charge. Therefore, anyone who's not a white, heterosexual, cis man has been disenfranchised in one way or another, or multiple ways. If we want policies that are going to help people of color, that are going to help transgender people, that are going to help gay people, that are going to help homeless people, let's bring homeless people to the table. Let's bring a trans person to the table. More than one trans person. Black people, Latino people, Asian people, Indian people, Muslim people, Christian people, Buddhist people. We need representation of all communities to come together to make policies that are fair for everybody, not just one group over another. I think that, that's her main point here, so let's keep listening.
So when we look at solutions, first of all, in order for healing to happen, you've got to admit the problem. And you've got to admit the harm that you've caused. So it's hard to move forward in a healing conversation if you don't talk about those problems that were caused. My project that I run, the community...
Before we get into the rest of what she's saying, I just want to mention that this is another dig at Albus. It is. It's because, and you'll see this in my other video, is he's asked, are you against the camping ban, or would you repeal the camping ban? And this, he stands by it. I mean, he basically does the Obamacare argument, repeal and replace, but basically we're not going to repeal until we have something to replace it. And Amanda Henderson, the Interfaith Alliance woman, says, because his point is basically, what would it do? And she says, you yourself say it has created a division in the city. So first of all, it would help mend that division. Second of all, do we really need to explain why we should stop criminalizing the homelessness? I don't. And see, this is where it comes into who are your donors? Who are you beholden to? These are people, man. These are people, and he doesn't seem to fucking get that.
The reentry project came about from community pushing back at the building of the new jails in Denver over 10 years ago. And they said, you know what, if you're going to institutionalize locking people up, you need to institutionalize keeping them out. You need to dedicate resources to make sure that they don't come back again. But what we have today is when we look at move along to where, it's often move along to jail and move along to the street and move along back to jail. So we have this cycle that continues and puts the onus on the individual to change their life rather than the institution changing itself. The institution will not change unless we make it change.
And this is actually, the institution won't change unless we make it. And I felt like a great example of that in the moment later on that night was when the people who were hosting, who were moderating, wanted to move on. There were still 12 or 13 people in line who wanted to speak. And they said, look, we're out of time. We want to be respectful to people's time, blah, blah, blah. And a guy stood up, and I hope I caught the audio, and he says, look, you wanted to have a discussion about homelessness. We've got 13 people in line here that want to speak their minds. We have momentum going. If you want to actually have a realistic, a productive conversation about homelessness, then don't stop it. Don't cut it off in the middle and when it's just starting to get going. And my point is, and I'll probably make this in the other video, is that you so rarely give people the chance to speak to you candidly. Of course, they're going to be here speaking their minds, especially when there's other people who agree with them, standing up, cheering behind them. You know, I don't know what the fuck you expect, especially after you pass something like the camping ban. People have stuff to say, and if you don't want to hear it, then don't show up, which they usually do. Albus Brooks is bought and paid for. I don't know by who, but just by his actions, either he's incompetent or he's bought and paid for. Let's keep listening.
And so I hope that's what we're all here tonight to do. I got the wrap-up signal, and that is the last thing I just want to say is this concept of justice reinvestment, or as a Colorado Criminal Justice Reform Coalition calls it, is community reinvestment, is when you shift the funds from government entities back into community. We can be better problem solvers because these are our family, our friends, our neighbors, our mothers, our brothers, our sisters who are most impacted. So why don't we get a say in how that money is being spent? And when that money is not being used fully and fruitfully, then it's time for us to have that and build up our communities again. Thank you.
Now, this is the last panelist, so this is kind of where the video is going to end. But I am not completely sure what her intent of what she was saying was, but what I picked up from it, and John Hayden hits on this later during the audience questioning, is when the people who experience the problem or know someone who experiences the problem, and you put those people in charge of doing something about it, the likelihood that they're going to keep those people in mind when they're making these decisions is a lot higher, because it's our brothers, our sisters, our mothers, our fathers, our friends. It's not some people somewhere that I don't know. So, and John Hayden's point is, we do this thing with businesses where we put a business somewhere, a homeless shelter somewhere, because it's easier for the business to function out of this place, and it's about easement for them, not about easement for the people who need the help. And when you do that, you displace people. You bring them from one community who has no resources to a community that does have resources, and therefore that other community it loses people. It's a displacement. You have concentrations of poor people in some places, concentrations of rich people in other places. And his point kind of came back to, what can you do personally is try to create solutions in your own community, in your very immediate locality, because when you do that, you diminish the frequency of displacement, which I think is hugely important. We've seen displacement over the history of humankind, and it's never good. So this was the first 45 minutes, and I know this video is probably close to an hour and a half long, but this kind of was basically hearing from the people in power a little bit, the people who have been involved in the homeless community for some time. But obviously there are people in the audience who, there's a guy who I met, and I like to interview him, who's with Impact Locally, I think it's called. And he made a lot of great points. I don't know if I was able to catch the audio on it. I hope so. But that's kind of why I wanted to interview him, so that I could reiterate all the points that he made. So that's the first half. You can click here for the second half, which will be the audience members. I know I say a lot. I'm really sorry. But just bear with me here. I'm new to this. Homeless lives matter, people. And Denver showed up last night to prove it. The people of Denver are done letting you criminalize homeless people. We're coming for your jobs if you don't do anything about it. Thank you for listening.